So we're going to use Christian language without actually identifying as Christian, because Christians might understand what that means. Okay, or people of similar sort of European Americano type cultural leanings. Okay, so we're talking about how the devil works. Okay, so first of all, the devil tries to claim that he's an externality. Um, Externality does not mean like that is actually truthfully inside your head or anything like that, because that's not true. He is actually external. Okay. How can I explain this? Okay. In psychology, there's this idea of internal versus external locus of control. Um, it doesn't mean what's in your head, okay, or in your fields or projected at you from somewhere else. It's not a spiritual reference. It's a reference to a style of behaviour whereby do you exercise responsibility or do you blame an externality? Now, sometimes you have to blame an externality because an externality is at fault. Sometimes externalities is all there are. Yeah, in the case of the Anatars under the Bodhi tree, externalities is all there are. Okay, so at that point, you sort of have to deal with that, but you still can have what's called an internal locus of control, because despite there being avatars under the Bodhi tree, you still have to exercise responsibility for your actions, even though you're dealing with the actions of others and only the actions of others, as it turns out. So, when it comes to that, religious people of religious persuasions often have what's called the external locus control. It's never their fault; it's the devil's fault. They're always God or Jesus or something like that. It's always the bad guys. Well, the bad guys are always external to them because the spirit of Christ lives within them. They obviously the good guy, and the devil's trying to get at them, so they're always persecuted. It's an example of the type of logic that has an external locus of control. It places the emphasis on a narcissistic misidentification of the Christian individual in that case with the good guy, and the bad guy always been external. Now, at the same time as that is the case, um, it doesn't necessarily follow that Christians also have a lack of responsibility, because they also believe that they're horrible sinners and they can never do anything right. Okay, so Christians hate Jesus, to use that language. Okay, Christians are the devil that hate Jesus. Anyway, so let's talk about what devil worship is. Devil worship is that you worship the externality. So you say they have a lot of power or influence over you, or something. They're the ones controlling the situation. Um, let's look at the difference between saying that as acknowledgement that someone has done something versus actually saying that they're powerful, or that they have the right to do it. There is a difference between that. Okay. If you acknowledge that a satellite, okay, is capable of transmitting artificial radio waves, and they hit satellite dishes and they hit TVs and they hit mobile phones, and you happen to be standing in the middle of all that crap, just like everyone else, and you get zapped, okay? Um, okay, it doesn't mean that that satellite necessarily has power over you. It's circumstantial. There are situations where you might be, for whatever spellcasting reason, connected up to, or some other reason, completely different from that. Spellcasting is how a magician would talk. A technician would probably say, if somebody was from the military and they'd been had a cybernetic implant installed, then that could also potentially communicate with such things. Um, uh, as a consequence of the military sometimes using a normal telecommunications infrastructure outside of the normal bandwidth. So this is your TV and your radio and stuff like that. This is military crap out here. Okay, basically. And so if you're walking down the street, you can get a wash with all of them. Okay, and so if you have a cybernetic implant from the military, it'll be time getting on that signal, but you're copying all of that, so the signals could cross over and interfere. Okay, could cause problems. Okay, and that is technically an externality. That is not something that the soldier created. That's something that the people that created the infrastructure created. The military likewise created the cybernetic implant, and they didn't necessarily always agree to it. So it really depends on the circumstances in each and every case. Okay, so when with that type of thing, so treat it on a case by case basis. So have you acknowledged that when you're walking down the street, that you can be zapped by satellites or something like that? It doesn't necessarily follow that you are being targeted by the government when it happens. To be targeted by the government is not the same, and specifically a foreign one. Okay, is not the same thing as accidentally copying the fake simulation that comes from your technology. They are two very, very different experiences. Okay, when you're not dealing with avatars on the Bodhi tree, okay, the self would have a means by which to process the information, because they'd still walk around awash in the same techno crap as everyone else. Okay, specific to their environment and circumstances. So exercising responsibility in spite of externalities affecting people, like projections or extrojections or whatever, or pushing back out, or artificial radio waves, people engaging in seer practices or whatever, is something that is possible to do. It's something that you have to do every day as an act of diligence. Okay, you can do it every day as an act of diligence. Okay, just because they put shit on you, just because they controlled you, just because they did bad stuff to you, just because you're not even there anymore and they are, okay, it doesn't mean you can't exercise responsibility. You have to, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And as you do so, you encounter personalities, projections coming from other places. You can even identify them. Okay? Those are the kinds of characters that think that control, domination, bullying, and abuse is a sign of their majesty and their power. Okay? Because they don't actually know what power is. Power is the internal locus of control. Which is to say that regardless of which spirits are with you, if you're in an avatar situation, then you don't have your own. They are, in fact, externalities, not internalities. The body, however, takes responsibility and is made to take responsibility due to circumstances. It doesn't mean they are responsible in terms of the cause. Okay? What it means is that the body is trying to use logic and reason to try and resolve the dilemma. So the ones that don't understand that, because they are in the habit of projecting their worldviews, okay, so this is where the worldviews come into it. Certain types of projections are directly a consequence of individuals with low education. So typically people with low education are people with external locuses of control. They're not just Christians, they're Wiccans, they're Jews, they're typically they're Muslims, they're MAGA supporters, neo-Nazis, current or ex-neo-Nazis. They're typically the kind of people that would put a sign on your front door with a condom on it, asking for sex. Those particular individuals as physical people are low IQ individuals with external locuses of control. They don't actually have a strong sense of capability or independence. They're accustomed to relying on hierarchies and as excuses for them for role modelling. They also are accustomed to bullying and abusing people as an act of stratification, because they actually don't have the intelligence or wherewithal to do the right thing in the first place. Lacking in a moral compass, a genuine moral compass that comes with taking genuine responsibility, means that they continue to be stupid morons. That being said, you can't, the prejudice, having prejudice towards people of different religious persuasions is ill-advised. Okay, that is stupidity. Just because someone ever subscribed to a particular worldview, or even better, had an ancestor who did, it doesn't necessarily mean they follow that they actually subscribe to that worldview at all in the present tense. It also doesn't mean they subscribe to all of that worldview, or that they interpret through the same lens as the individual in question. So Take, for example, there was a video on YouTube. This is going to sound awful to some people because it is awful. Okay, it was where there was a guy who was presumably from the KKK in the USA, and or maybe a Christian nationalist. What's the difference? And he had a Talmud open, and he read this Mishnah, which was vile, absolutely fucking vile. It was a genuinely disgusting Mishnah, okay, as it relates to child abuse, okay, and dowries and stuff like that, okay. It was disgusting, okay. At that point, if you're any person of reason, okay, you would chuck that book out. Just the same as there's passages in the Bible where you chuck the Bible out. So it's the same as there's passages in every world religion where you chuck it out. You know, Kybalion, for example, or Thelema or whatever. You take that idea, you chuck it out. Okay, that's disgusting. Okay, you can't have it. The thing is, though, it doesn't necessarily follow that Jewish people support child abuse. One of the potential counter arguments, and this is where it's really awful, is that 21st century culture and the culture as it was, say, 4,000 years ago is not the same. So obviously the dowry system is a form of objectification because it treats people like property. It's criminal. Nonetheless, in the context of a bunch of men with low IQs and no education who are used to clubbing women over the head, making the dad the person who tells them all off, and it acts as a gatekeeper, is probably the best thing they could come up with at the time. So when they said that, when they said that, they said the following, okay? I'm sure, okay? They said, okay, you touched them up. Yeah. Go talk to the dad. Yeah. You have to pay them a dowry now. Okay. Thing is, they're living in tents and they're out bush. There's a lot of places to bury them. Okay? Take a guess what the dad's going to do in that situation. Oh, you did what now? Oh, you want to pay a dowry for that? Sure. Let's go for a nice walk and through the forest and we'll get to know each other and have a nice, man-to-man chat about that one. Okay? Right? Okay? Only one person comes back. Okay? Realistically, that's what that was for. However, you certainly hope so. Right? Yeah. Okay. No? Okay. That's what you'd hope. So when you'd hope, contextually you'd hope. The thing is though, as cultures progressed into city-states, dragging about bush and leaving one behind hasn't really become a viable option. These days we have police and courts and crap like that. And so we also have this issue of dowries not being a thing, at least in a lot of what you might call so-called Western countries. Okay, so there's that. So let's have a look at the externalization of locus of control in that situation, how that applies. People who were indoctrinated from their early childhood to believe in fictional characters, more generally, not a specific religion, or in adulthood took excessive amount of drugs and became psychotic, might be the kinds of characters that would presume that fictional characters are real. So people who don't believe in Santa Claus, okay, are less likely to believe that fictional characters from TV shows are real, okay? So there's a reason why you don't show your kids horror movies, okay? There's a really good reason why you don't do that. There's a good reason why you don't show your kids the news, okay? This idea of politics in youth is pretty lousy. It's quite dangerous. People should be at least 15 before they're exposed to politics or religion at all. preferably 20 to 25. Okay, and so before the age of 15, it's just off limits. Okay, they should it should be off limits. These cults that are raising their children in any cult at all, whether it's the New Age movement, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, whatever it might be, are doing them harm because in each and every case, okay, it's not Santa Claus that's the problem. It's not Christmas that's the problem. Okay, it's not aliens from outer space that's the problem. It's the idea that those people are cultified into not being able to discern accurately fact from fiction. Okay, and where there are situations where some things could be true, this is when the plausibility issue becomes an issue. Aliens, for example. Okay, this is where the New Age movement is quite dangerous. Okay, aliens are fucking real. You can guarantee they are real. Even if you took a hard-nosed astrophysics look at the thing, they're saying that the cosmos is fucking massive. Excuse the language. It's a great big fucking place. Okay? They've even taken pictures of star systems far, far away, they reckon, and there's exoplanets there. It would be unrealistic at this point to assume that planet Earth is the only place with life on it. Subsequently, from the vantage point of planet Earth, there's definitely aliens and a shit ton of them. So, with that particular idea, you cannot rule out aliens. You cannot even rule out alien involvement, particularly in a situation where solar flares are capable of producing enough energy to puncture spaces in the solar system, between the planets, whatever that the interplanetary medium with the cosmic background radiation or whatever the fuck it is, okay, right? And potentially create a puncture hole that's big enough to create a portal to another universal galaxy or aspect of the same galaxy, like as in Milky Way. Okay, you can't like wormhole or some portal or something like that. Okay, that is in fact possible. That is in fact sometimes how UAPs appear as well. It's called the interdimensional hypothesis. Okay, that's a thing. Okay, that's not bullshit. That's a thing. Okay, saying that aliens have visited planet Earth is not a lie. They have. They do. Okay, what is actually more concerning is when they're telling children that, though. And don't want to tell children that. If that's what's happening now, then you switch this video off. Okay, so when you start telling, or the extrapolated edition of 1970 Satanism, which said that the aliens were running a hierarchy and they had invented all the world religions as per Skitchen of Von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods book. Okay? That's crap. That is absolute fucking crap. Okay? You can guarantee that the ancient Sumerian kings were human beings who had personality issues as a consequence of their social situation being confusing and confronting for the human psyche. Okay? It was unusual for such a strong amount of hierarchy to exist before. It was uncommon in human societies and cultures up until that point, if not non-existent. They were an example of one of the early ones to do that. So that's why that's an important point to make. When people did have quote-unquote hierarchies, okay, in their local communities, at most it was a chief, okay, with a council of elders, and elders could come from just about any age group, as long as they were the smart ass and knew how to talk things through and make decisions, okay? Okay, so this idea of a monarch, okay, is a very recent thing. It was a thing that was a outgrowth of the chieftain system. And in every case, those emperors, which were never gods, had, and are not gods now, had no divine authority at all. Okay? Kings and queens, emperors and empresses, pharaohs and whatnot have never had divine authority. When they first emerged culturally, okay, there was no spiritual dimension to what they were doing. It was entirely practical. What they needed to do was maintain law and order. And the best way to maintain law and order was by appealing to an invisible externality, like a deity, a spirit, something that people could not see, the Santa Claus of their society. And so that meant that those people were lying to their community as a means of control. It's also the case that Santa Claus is a lie that parents tell their children to get them to behave. Be honest now, okay? The parents that do that are engaging in mind control tactics. They're telling their kids that if they're well behaved, they're going to get this a great present at the end of the year. They go to school and do their homework and they don't pull their sister's hair or their brother's hair or whatever, okay? Then they're going to get a good present at the end of the year. They're being mind controlled into good behaviour. But if you're naughty, you could get a lump of coal and Santa won't give you a present, okay? Okay, that's not disciplined behaviour, not for conditioning, don't know what is. Okay, Santa Claus in that situation has never existed. Santa Claus has never existed, okay? There are these people called the Sami who live near the North Pole who herd reindeer. They exist. Ha ha ha, they're Santa's elves. Well, they probably wouldn't think that, actually. But anyway, maybe they might joke about it. We don't know. The point is though, is Santa Claus never existed. The North Pole is too cold. Well, actually, it used to be too cold. And apparently, it's defrosted because of climate change, I reckon. But anyway, the sort of appealing to externalities, externalities are not the artists on the bonetry, okay? What they are a different type of externality. It's appealing to something that is not visible, okay? They're not visible as excuse making, okay? Is a common feature of cult-based hierarchies. So, just because the first king was good at bashing a woolly mammoth a bit better than the other ones, and it was scary to the other tribes that were trying to around them or something, it doesn't necessarily follow that they had a divine right to do so, as the Grand Viziers had followed after that said. Okay, because they were trying to maintain their social position. Opera and Convincing had told them that they were going to get a better slice of the meat, better slice of the pie. They were getting one in that social position. Why would they change that? So this idea of them not having dynasties and where the son took over from the father and whatever else, okay, didn't appeal to them. They wanted to keep getting their tribute, okay. And so, of course, with that, you get this idea of the tutelary deities require tribute, okay. And so they create this spirit situation where you go and you give tribute to these invisible beings, and you, as well as give tribute or taxation to the visible one, which is the aristocracy or the burgeoning aristocracy at the time. And so, in both cases, it's a bald-faced lie. The tutelary deity is nothing more than an egregore that was created by a community as they were subjected to the social conditioning and programming of normal human individuals who were being supported by people who were very good at mind control and storytelling, Grand Viziers. And so tutelary deities never existed in the first place. So what really has existed is a mass of people sort of bumping into each other with worldviews, with different programming conditioning that supports that. So when it comes to things like the devil is what's going to come for you if you're not a good boy or girl. He's the one that gives you coal. Says Santa's Jesus when he gives you presents, okay? But he's the devil when he gives you coal, basically. So he's a Janus with two faces, as the Romans would say. And so it's obviously a load of bullshit. So this idea of the good alien versus the bad alien, okay, with those sort of UFO cult type stuff. In the New Age movement, okay, they're trying to say there are these space brothers basically who are trying to help everyone out, right? And it's like, well, actually, that's not believable to some people because they're going, well, hang on a second, what? They're aliens from outer space. They have their own agendas. True story. They're a different species. Okay? They're not from planet Earth. They don't get it. They really don't get it. They have their own culture, their own history, their own everything. Okay? Okay? Their own logic. The way they would perceive, and to be fair, they're flying spaceships, they probably are sentient beings. That's not a dispute. The thing is though, is that wherever they came from, they would have their own stuff. And because they have their own stuff, their stuff is not necessarily discernible to people. So the problem here is that you've got people projecting onto this idea of the aliens, stuff that they got from their own cultures. And the New Age movement is guilty of it. They are definitely guilty of it. They project their stuff onto the aliens. They want good aliens to help them. They want to be the good aliens. They want to be the noblest and bleach. So typically the ones that believe in the good aliens are middle-class white people who are sitting on a rug they got from in America they call it Best Buy. Don't know why they came up, but anyway, they're Kmart basically, and they have a rug that they sit on. Yeah, it's a rug that they sit on, and they go, "Oh, law of abundance." They're super rich because because they declared it so. Oh wait, the husband just came home, and in America it's called a 401k, right? Superannuation or something, and they go, "Oh, okay, yeah, everything's abundant for them because they came from a middle class family, where they were raised as white Christians and managed to have their husband managed to have an office job, and they're privileged, and as part of their noblesse oblige, they're not going to go to any protests and do any of the hard work. What they'll do instead is they'll pray the poverty away by declaring that they're in a state of abundance and that they're everyone and everything. The Great Space Brothers are helping them out. Okay, so people who are not middle class white people from the USA, that sounds like absolute fucking bullshit. That sounds like bullshit and escapism. Okay, it sounds like bullshit and escapism. No, the Archons want to, of a dark agenda wants you to think that, you can't do magic and or live in a law and abundance. It's all about hard work. Are you saying that the poor people are the Archons? Are you saying that their real lived experience is an archontic deception strategy? Well, who's the one that's benefiting from that strategy? That'd be the middle class people whose husbands have a 401k where they can afford stuff like crystal balls and whatever, and who think Elon Musk is like some kind of divine superhero when actually he's trying to transfer their consciousness into the Optimus robots. Like, come on, okay. Get real. Get real. Okay? What's an Archon? Okay. Let's talk about the shadow beings, okay? You have to do Jungian archetypes in a way that the New Age movement doesn't, and not listen to anything psychology has to say on the matter, including Jung. Alright, that's sarcasm, obviously. Alright. Okay, what's Archons? An Archon is a shadow demon with red eyes. Okay? That is a projection of technology. Specifically, the technology it's a projection of is concrete. And why would it be concrete or mica or some kind of quartzite? Now, why would it be that for? The reason why it's that is because quartzites are capable of what's called the piezoelectric effect. So this physical body did some research when they were at university, okay? Just a bit of a background on this physical body is technical education. Bachelor of Social Science, psych major, okay? Electives in parapsychology, specifically specialising or showing interest in the interdimensional hypothesis, the relationship between solar physics and geology, and how it can create paranormal perceptions. This is how you get an archon. An archon is what happens when a solar flare hits quartzite rock that's been around for a long time. The piezoelectric effect occurs and an image pops out. So some kind of smear or something like that, maybe it's dirt or something like that, happens, and a projection of the person's psyche happens in relation to whatever's going on in their environment. So they then see a shadow demon as a consequence. So a shadow demon is both a projection of a person's psyche. We're not just determining whose psyche it is. In collective mind spaces, it could be a whole bunch of people's. Okay, jumping out of quartzite rock. Now, why would concrete be applied to that? Obviously, mica is a type of quartzite, but concrete is not, because concrete contains radio waves. So a lot of rocks you'll probably find contain radio waves. Okay, they absorb them, they emit them. And artificial radio waves come from technology. So concrete is something that has been absorbing radio waves, both artificial and natural, for quite some time, and is a rather what's obsequious? No, ubiquitous. Like, it's pretty much everywhere. Okay, in modern societies and towns and villages and skyscrapers and whatever else. Okay, and the concrete absorbing and emitting radio waves as well, because it is technically made from crushed rocks. Is absorbing shit and emitting shit that comes from your TV and your computer and whatever else. It's also absorbing and emitting shit that's natural as well. And so, with the radio waves, they contain packets of information, that are sort of like might sort of like a sort of different aspect of the spectrum of light waves. So first of all, you need to acknowledge that light waves all go at the same speed. Until physics proves that light is not the universal constant, they all have the same speed. And that's why spirits aren't light, because they go at different speeds. Okay, the same spirit can change its speed. A different spirit can go at a different speed to a different spirit, and so on and so forth. Okay, they change their speeds, and therefore spirits aren't light. They can go faster than the speed of light. They can, which is what some people call quantum entanglement effects or bilocation effects. They can also go slower than the speed of light. They can change their speed. And something that can change its speed is not fucking light. An artificial radio wave goes at the same speed as a natural one, and it goes at the same speed as the ultraviolet. The thing is, though, is the packets of information are not the same. So with UV, it's more bunched together, and with radio waves, it's more spread apart. And that's the difference you're going to notice. And the reason why radio waves and microwaves are so important in this is because the ones, the slow, what they call it, they're not really slow waves, but the radio wave and microwaves are more spaced out. And because they're more spaced out, okay, the way they punch into objects is not quite the same. Okay, it sort of lackadaisically, like if you're moving fast but kind of lackadaisically like a cork on the ocean. Okay, you might find that you know your circumstances could still drown, but you might just go with the flow, with the big waves that are going on, and you just move around, and then you next thing you know, you're on a different island or something like that. Okay, but if you go and dog paddle really fast, okay, it's like trying to like swim up a hill, okay, up a waterfall, okay. It ain't gonna do you good. You need a different set of skills. You want to go up a waterfall, you need to have anti-slip devices and harnesses and climb up the rocks. Don't go swimming up that fucking waterfall. Okay, you'll see fish don't swim up waterfalls. What do fish do? They leap. Okay, they leap. They don't even swim. They leap. Okay, so those going with the flow in that one is kind of important. Okay, when it comes to comprehending the waves. So. And they're not slow moving. So this is what you understand about radio waves and microwaves. They're not slow moving. They move at exactly the same speed as ultraviolet, and the ones in between. Okay, and they the way the information is bunched is not the same. So they're sort of like, so the information is what you're dealing with. The speed is the same, the information is not. Hey, ho, how are you today? Hey, how are you today? Right, okay. So that's faster in terms of sound. Okay, it was lightweight, it'd be exactly the same speed. Hey, how are you today? Hey, how are you today? Right, but if it was a radio wave, it would be dragged out with the same speed. Hey, how are you today? Hey, how are you today? That's what. Hey, how are you today? Right, so it's the same speed, right? Same information, but the way it's bunched is not the same. Okay, it's like um, um, so them archons, okay, jumping out as like shadow images coming out of piezoelectric rocks or whatever, a kind of a thing. So the shadow beings, like you are often that's what they are. It's not always what they are. There's also the issue of bilocation effects and Anatars on Bodhi trees, and what that may or may not mean. So if you got Anatars on Bodhi trees, okay, then the Anatars are technically other people. So let's look at the difference between the mythologization of people's psyches and the truth of the situation. So when you're dealing with Anatars in the Bodhi tree, you're not dealing with your inner demons. You're not dealing aspects of your subconscious. What you are dealing with is massive bilocation issues of other beings. They're Anatars. They're not self. Okay? You're not yourself. Okay? And that means that you're dealing with their stuff. And one of the problems with their stuff is that they try to make it your stuff. Okay? And the reason why they do that is because they're not advanced and they're jealous. So the great Mara that you might experience is called toxic hypocrisy and male jealousy, coming from middle-aged men and older, who come from cult-like reasoning, where they like to assume that certain types of things are fact and other types of things are fiction. Okay, what they determine as fact is whatever they make up at the time, which is usually bullying and abusive to you. What they determine as fiction is science, reason, and decency. And that is the worst. That's the worst Mara of them all, the religious Mara. And you'll probably find that the New Age movement is full of people like that, just like the Wiccans. Have a nice day, Nazis.